So the industrial strategy has been released, and I have to say I am really glad that they actually did one, that they have done this, because this is something that the UK has been missing for years. Okay, if you remember the leveling up white paper that was released, in like the first two chapters were absolutely incredible and almost like a scathing indictment of like the previous government, of like, this is what all the stuff you could have been doing. Well, one of the things it did say was, look, you needed a strategy, because you were just doing random things and hoping that it would work. But if you had a strategy and said, this is our end goal, this is what we want to achieve, and then you can direct your policy towards achieving those goals, then at least you can have an idea for then how successful those particular policies are. Previous conservative government ideas just pretty much involved throwing money at industries or groups or organizations, just hoping for the best. Meanwhile, of course, now that we actually have an industrial strategy for the first time in years, decades even, we can now go, okay, this is what we want to achieve. How successful are the policies that Labour are going to be bringing in to judge them by? And of course, we've got an overall idea of where we want to see the government go. Now, there are some details missing, but that's fine. Those details can come later. That is perfectly fine. But at least you've got a strategy to say, this is the goal, this is where we want to go. And then you can put in your policies to say, that's the goal we want to reach with those policies. And then, of course, you can then you can then measure the success, shall we say, or judge the measure of success by those policies, by has it reached that goal. So we're going to have a look at what this means, some of the areas that have been highlighted of what the government sees as its 8 most critical industries to the UK. I am really glad that at one point the creative industry sector has been highlighted, because I've talked about this before. Something a lot of people don't realize, we are really, really good in that sector when it does come to creative industries. And it is a sector that should be highly, highly valued in that area. So before we do going into this, please do remember to click on the like, share, and subscribe button down below. Of course, there are links to my Patreon page, the one donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can all buy me coffee, the YouTube thank you button, and of course, the YouTube membership button as well. And of course, it is Wednesday, so thank you very much to all those Patreon supporters, and of course, the YouTube members. Like I say, they get a weekly video that I do for them every week. And if you want to join that, you want to see not only that, but the previous ones I made, by all means, do join that, and you get to see all those videos as well. So, as always, let's crack on then into this. So, this comes from The Guardian, the UK industrial strategy, the key points and what's missing. So, starts off with, the UK now will take a far more muscular approach to government. Under the Labour government, according to the new industrial strategy, it now also full of opportunity for British businesses. The strategy, published on Monday, contains a range of policy measures, ranging from trying to lower energy prices to speeding up drug approvals. One of now the most important messages in the strategy is that the government will focus on accelerating growth now for the fastest growing third of the economy, which is, again, not a bad idea. Focus on your successes, build on your strengths. Again, no one can disagree with that, because that is a tried and true tested strategy for a lot of businesses in that regard. So the government has identified now 8 sectors of the IS8. 8 judges now have the highest potential for economic growth. These are the advanced manufacturing, which is, again, good, creative industries, life science, clean energy, defense and digital technology businesses, including artificial intelligence and quantum computing, financial services, and, of course, banking, insurance, and professional services such as accounting and the legal profession. Again, good that it is highlighting those things as well. Very rarely do these type things get thought out about when people go, industrial strategy, why should we focus on things like professional services? Should they not look after themselves? No, you need things like this. For example, training, let's say university places for, people going into that profession, making sure that you have, ample training, good training, world-class training, because that, guess what? That improves then the legal, accounting, all those professional services in that area. That is something really good that we can see focused on in that. So all these sectors will now receive the bulk of the government industrial support, whether, of course, it be through clean energy prices, trade support, or skills training. Here are just some of now the most important policies in the strategy. So trying to cut costs for bigger businesses. This is ultimately the bigger one. At the moment, energy costs are sky high for us. It is good to see the government really tackling this. Other countries have done this to a lot of success. And as I've always said before, if the country is doing it and it's successful, why not copy it? And in this case, they really seem to be copying what's been going on in Europe with some of this with this idea. So the big central piece for the industrial strategy is, of course, reducing energy costs for big electricity users, although, of course, not immediately. Action, of course, to cut energy costs has been now a key request for industry for years. The government has said that it will introduce a British industrial competitiveness scheme from 2027 now to reduce the electricity cost for 7,000 businesses that use electricity intensively. Companies, of course, in manufacturing sectors such as automotive, aerospace, and chemicals will be exempt from paying for renewables obligations, trying to feed in tariffs and a capacity market. These policy costs were imposed now to pay for now green energy programs, but industries now have long argued that they put British businesses now at a disadvantage to competitors. Energy intensive industries will, of course, included now for makers of steel, chemicals, and fertilizers, will also receive a 90% discount from to 60% from other policy costs and will help to fund the electricity network. The government has said that the network changing compensation scheme will also cut costs from around 500 businesses from around 2026. So, again, this, as it said, big ask from multiple British businesses. We recently saw a theme park go from opening every day of the week during the summer to now having to cut 2 days off because the price of electricity was just not worth it. It was killing the theme park. So this is something that we are seeing. Of course, some of these things aren't going to come in immediately. A lot of this is going to be to do with trying to develop all that green energy, which the government are doing as well. So that is good. And this also comes into another thing, which is the grid itself, which we are seeing. And I'm really glad, again, they are building this up as well. Again, infrastructure, really important thing that has not been spent a lot of money on for the past couple of years. Well, over the past social administration. And we are seeing the consequences of that. So, speeding up the grid connections. Energy costs are, of course, not an issue for companies that cannot even connect, of course, to the grid in the first place. For factories, energy generation, or even housing. To reduce the queuing times now for new connectivity accelerator service is being now launched now by the end of the year. This will act as a concierge now for projects that could create jobs or even speed up economic growth, which again would be good to see this. The government will now add new powers to change regulatory processes to make it easier for strategically important projects now to get connected, and will look at ways of now pressuring network companies now to speed it up. Again, really good that we're seeing this. Really good that we're seeing this type of thing. Increased exports. The government, of course, wants to be seen as a free trade champion, even as the US turns now to protectionism. It's highlighted now talks on trade agreements with the Arab states, the Persian Gulf, South Korea, Switzerland, Turkey, and trying to align industrial strategy with Japan and looking at ways now to deepen cooperation now with France and Germany. Again, why not? This thing, pretty good on this. Overseas investment now support will be focused on the IS8 companies, and of course, help ambassadors now in key markets help with trying to draw up plans to help those sectors. UK export finance and government departments guarantee loans for exports will, of course, be allowed now to grow further. Again, don't disagree. Even let's say, even if we were still in the EU, I would still argue this is a good idea. Helping companies to export and to get access into new markets is something a government should do and should be doing. It is not a bad thing. This is a good thing. Even when we're in the EU, this was something the government would still do. So I think in trying to sort of look at this, saying, hey, we want to be an exporter, we want to be a country that exports more. Again, good to see. Good to see that they are at least, focusing on that, especially when we have seen our exports fall because of Brexit. But, you know, um, I am glad to at least see them trying to reverse that, even though, again, we won't reverse that until we rejoin single market custom union, etc. You know my argument on this before. But anyway, defense technology. The government has now already committed to increase defense spending, although trying to make it an attractive source of funding for the British industry is, of course, very strained at times. At least 10% of the military defense equipment budget will go on, quote, novel technologies such as drones and artificial intelligence. To that end, the UK Defence Innovation Body announced back in March will get a budget of £400 million. The government will also provide the National Security Strategic Intervention Fund up to 350 million by 2030 to try and invest in companies that can help the UK national security, while, of course, existing National Wealth Fund will be directed now to consider military investments. And bear in mind, this is something people should really take notice of. You've seen a lot of Conservatives be really annoyed that defence funding is being spent on infrastructure. Okay, infrastructure spending has been for a very, very, very long time acknowledged in the fact that you can spend money on infrastructure because that helps your defense. That helps in a country's defense. So a lot of the defense funding, even though we've sort of increased it, a lot of that money is being allocated into infrastructure spending because that's what you can do with the thing. And again, helps increase your country's defense. That's why you've seen a lot of Conservatives be really, really angry. Like, why are you spending money on infrastructure? It should be spent on defense tech. But improving your infrastructure in your country helps improve your defense. But anyway, there we go. Anyway, back to this. But I am also, again, glad for this as well. Something that has been done for a while. This is also, I think, very good as well. The equity stakes now in promising startups. This month's spending review, again, which we talked about before, the government committed another 400 billion now to the British Business Bank to support small and mid-sized UK companies to take its total capacity up to 25.6 billion pounds. The BBB, well, all it's just typical when I say BB, I expect to say BBC, but no, BBB will be allowed to take equity from shares for the first time of up to £6 million, which could give the government a big direct economic returns if startups become very highly valued billion-dollar unicorns. Again, good investment, making a long-term investment in that type of thing. I think a long time coming, a lot of other countries have done, can provide huge, huge value. We talked about this last time. The change in government when it has come to this, seeing things not as assets just to sell off, but assets which you can derive value from by taking a stake in them is good. Fundamental change. Because again, we've got a different government, different thinking, different things mean you can do things like this. This, I think, down the line, not immediately, but I think could possibly be quite valuable to the UK when we look at things like this. So the quicker medicines now and opening up health data. The government, of course, will aim now to cut delays now to try medical trials to try and streamline drug approval processes of medicines and healthcare products, the Regulatory Act to try and accelerate development of new treatments, and of course, make it far more attractive for companies to invest in the UK. NHS procurement and medical technology will also be accelerated. Again, something I do want to talk about before, but I actually know someone who works in this. So if I could get them on here to try and explain this would be interesting. Because one of the things a lot of people don't realize, the NHS makes quite a lot of money, has been making quite a lot of money from this type of thing, partnering with companies to develop new medical devices. Again, we are the world leader in that. Again, something else a lot of people don't realize, we are the world leader in developing medical devices and this type of stuff. Really good to see. Again, that is because the NHS partners with companies to develop that because of all the data that they have. So again, while I know, that sounds a bit scary, massively positive for the NHS in many ways. So again, this type of thing helps a area that we are good at, but also helps the NHS as well. So it's a win-win for what of that. Um, and then, of course, they go on to sort of what's missing. They talk about uh, mainly a lot of the detail. There's a couple of like sector plans that are missing on that, like life sciences, the financial services ones. There is a defense industrial strategy that is being written as well. That will be coming later because it hasn't been published. But overall, it is, I think, good. I think overall, this strategy, the industrial strategy, I relatively think is quite good. Like I do think that is what we've seen in this is quite good, and I was hoping that it would be quite good. And guess what? I'm delighted to say, excellent, quite good. Especially some of the creative stuff, which again wasn't mentioned there, but I do think you will see a lot of good stuff from the creative sector. I think that is good that the government has actually recognised. Oh yeah, we are actually good and have a really good creative sector in the UK. Let's actually support it. Again, very good to see that. Very, very good to see that area, of course, being supported. But of course, I want to know hear what you think. Do you think this is good? Do you think there's anything else that they might have missed? Let me know what you think down below. So, as always, we'll see you all next time.